Alright, we need to talk about Lee Everett because it's actually insane how, after all of these years, people still argue about him like the game came out yesterday. And it's not because who's your favorite character? People argue like it's personal. Some people swear that Lee is one of the greatest heroes in gaming. Other players are like, hold on, are we forgetting he literally killed someone? And that's right there is the reason Lee is still the most debated character in The Walking Dead Season 1. Because Lee Everett isn't a character you just watch. Lee is a character you become. When you talk about Lee, you're basically talking about yourself, your choices, your values, and how you handle fear. So today, I want to break down why Lee's legacy is still controversial and why the truth about him is probably more uncomfortable than people want you to admit. Let's start from where the game begins. Lee isn't introduced as a hero, he's introduced as a prisoner, hands cuffed, sitting in the back of a cop car, and you do not even know what he did at first. And what makes it genius is that the game doesn't give you comfort. It doesn't say, oh, don't worry, guys, he's innocent. No, it lets that truth sit there like a shadow. Lee murdered someone, and even the details around that are kind of foggy. Like the game wants you to ask yourself, was it in rage? Was it justified? Or was it just an accident? Because depending on what you assume, your entire view of Lee changes. And that's why he's controversial from minute one. Because every good thing Lee does later has this invisible asterisk next to it. Yeah, but what kind of man was he before the apocalypse? And this is very important. Lee doesn't get the apocalypse as a fresh start. He gets it as a second chance, and not everyone deserves a second chance. That's the tension. Most apocalypse stories give you the classic hero, the tough soldier, the confident leader, the guy who basically has been preparing his whole life for day Z. Lee is not that person. Lee feels like an actual person, awkward sometimes, sometimes quiet, and sometimes even angry. And he constantly is walking this line where you can tell he's trying to become better, but the world keeps dragging him back into violence. Then the game gives you Clementine, and this is where everything flips. Because now Lee isn't just surviving, he's responsible for someone innocent. And suddenly, you're watching a convicted murderer turn into a protector. That's not a normal hero story. That's redemption, but under pressure. And that's why people love him, and also why people don't trust him. Because the question becomes, is Lee protecting Clementine because he's generally a good person, or because he needs to be good now to balance out who he used to be? And that's a very human question. Now, let's get into the real reason why Lee is debated. His choices. Because Telltale doesn't give you good or bad choices. It gives you bad choices and different bad choices. And that turns Lee into a mirror. Let's go over three of them. Choice number one, the supplies from the stranger's car. You remember that scene. You remember seeing that food and how it felt like a trap. But you're starving and also everyone else is. If you steal it, you feel guilty. If you don't, you feel stupid. And then you hear Clementine's voice, that tiny voice, and suddenly it's not about food anymore. It's about teaching a kid what survival means. Because if Lee steals, Clementine learns. We take what we need. If Lee doesn't, Clem learns we stay human. And players still argue about this decision like it's politics, and that's why Lee is debated. Choice number two, Larry. This one, this one is a nuclear bomb. Let's be honest. No one liked Larry. But it's not because it's really about Larry. It's more about how far you're willing to go. If you try to save him, you're choosing hope. But if Larry wakes up and turns, everyone might die. So, if you kill him, you can justify it. You can say it was the smart move, but you'll never feel clean after it. You don't walk away thinking, yeah, I did the right thing. You walk away thinking, did I just become a monster? That's what Lee is, a character who puts players in a situation where there is no way to stay innocent in this world. Choice 3, Ben. And this is where we have Ben. And people get so divided here. Some people just hate Ben. They blame him for everything. Who wouldn't? But there's also other players who forgive him because he's literally a child, which is actually the truth. He's a literal child. But here's what matters. Whatever Lee does becomes a statement. If you kill Ben, Lee becomes hardened, cold. If you save Ben, Lee becomes merciful, but also risks the group. So, your Lee is either the man who protects the weak or the man who cuts loose ends. And both feel believable. And that's why no one can agree on this choice. Now, this is the most important decision of them all. And this is where Lee becomes legendary. Because Clementine changes the meaning of every decision. She's not someone you protect. She's someone who's learning from you. And the game makes you sure you feel that. Clem watches how Lee talks to people, how he solves problems, how he reacts when he's angry, how he treats bad people, and what breaks players because you realize you're not just surviving, you're raising a human being in a nightmare. So every time Lee uses violence, it's not just violence, it's a lesson. And that's where the controversy deepens. Lee can do horrible things and still be a father figure. Or Lee can do the right thing and still doom people. It's really messy, but it's real, and that's why it sticks. And then you reach the ending, and the game hits you with one last cruelty. Lee gets bitten, and what makes this powerful is that it doesn't feel like the character's dying. It feels like someone you've been carrying emotionally for an entire season, which is now collapsing. And the worst part? Lee doesn't panic about himself. He panics for Clementine. He spends his last moments not trying to save his life, but trying to save her future. Then that last choice comes. Do you tell Clementine to shoot you, or do you tell her to leave? Because both options are about love, but different types of love. The first one is that I can't let you see me become a monster. The other one is I can't make you live without pulling the trigger. And no matter what you choose, the guilt stays. Because his story ends, but the moral question doesn't. So why is Lee Everett the Walking Dead Season 1's most debated character? Because Lee isn't just a simple hero. He's a man with a past which he can erase, trying to become someone a child can believe in. And the game doesn't give you one canon Lee. It lets you create your own choice. That means the debate never ends because everyone defends their own version. Everyone believes their Lee was justified. Everyone believes that their Lee was good. And that's the uncomfortable truth. When we debate Lee, we're debating what we think survival should cost. So here's my question. Was Lee Everett really a good man? Or was he a man just trying to feel forgived before it was too late? And what did your Lee do? Write it in the comments.